What is happening? Welcome back to the 182 News Podcast. This is your host, Poppin' Curbs. Appreciate you tuning in to a special episode. Today is a big day. We got to celebrate. So it is the 20th anniversary of the podcast logo, take off your pants and jacket. Shouldn't be a surprise if you've listened to the pod before. It is my favorite album of all time. It is the reason the podcast logo is what it is. I want to dig deep into this. Now, I got to be honest, I've been sick the past few days. I was literally at the doctor's office with my wife and kid this morning. I wasn't planning on doing anything for this. I had an interview a couple days ago that I actually had to bail on because I was sick. And the past couple days, I was thinking, crap, I should have done something for Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. Today, it's Saturday. It's literally the 20th anniversary. I'm seeing all these pictures. I'm sharing all these pictures, making these cool posts. I'm, talking about this with other Blink fans. And I'm thinking to myself, fuck, I have got to record something about this. This is my favorite album of all time. Are you kidding me? So I'm going to power through this. And as long as you don't hear me faint here momentarily, I'm going to try to power through this. If you hear me cough, I'm sick. I'm sorry. I was literally throwing up about 4 or 5 hours ago, but I'm going to try and power through this. So let's talk about this. 20 years of my favorite Blink-182 album of all time. So as I mentioned before, the logo is what it is because of this. This album means so much to me. I've been looking forward to this day. I want to talk about the launch of some rad merch this morning. So at Blink182merch.com, Mr. T-shirt, gosh, I swear his comeback, I haven't seen a comeback like this since Michael Jordan to the Bulls. It is insane. They bring back the one and only Mr. T-shirt, and this dude is just crushing it with these OG T-shirts and logos and just bundles and merch packages. And when I saw him teasing some of the Take Off Your Pants and Jacket stuff, I was already super, super stoked. And he hinted that it was going to be releasing today. We did not know what time. Ended up dropping at 11 o'clock my time, Central Time this morning. Hope you got a chance to snag some stuff. There are a couple T-shirts that are up for pre-order. There's a T-shirt and then there's a black hoodie that's dope. They're up for pre-order, so you're definitely good there. And then there were 3 items that were limited. There was a washed out hoodie, limited to 182 pieces. There was a jumper shirt, kind of a washed out shirt of Mark jumping. It's a throwback retro shirt they remade. If you missed out on that one, you can get the all black version at Hot Topic still. So definitely check that out if you missed it. And then there's like a luggage tag that's really rad. All 3 of those are unfortunately sold out, but I hope you were able to snag some of those. So huge shout out to Mr. T-shirt doing the Lord's work as always. For those of you who follow me at Poppin' Curbs, I don't know if you saw my license plate I posted. I got a new one and it is TOYPAJ. So Toy Page. And last year I had the plus 44 license plate last year, and I think 2 people asked me about it. This is like a little game I play. I drive around and I see if anybody asks me or bothers me about my license plate. Nobody asked about plus 44. I got the Take Off Your Pants and Jacket one. I figured it's a perfect year for it. I try to switch it up every year so they have to send me a new license plate. And that way I have one to put up in my garage. If you get the same one in Indiana, they just send you a sticker. And I learned a long time ago, fuck that. If I'm going to pay $75 or whatever it is to renew it, I'm going to get a new one to hang up in my garage. So all these people keep asking me about my new license plate. And the first couple people were elderly. And they're like, what is Toy Page? I'm saying, it stands for Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and I'm just praying they don't get the pun. Well, a couple of them have gotten the pun, and so in the past few days, I'm trying to think of in my head, okay, what can I lie to these older people and tell them this is about so I don't have to explain this whole meaning and get scolded? So the latest in my brain is toast on your peanut butter and jelly. That's what I'm going with. If you have something better than that, please let me know. And if you see me scooting around town, especially in southern Indiana, give me a honk. That's me. I don't know anybody else who has that license plate. I haven't seen it before. So give me a holler if you see me. So obviously, today, special day, I want to talk about Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. So I think the reason this album was so important to me and the reason why it stands a test of time is really the time it came out in my life. I think I was a freshman in high school at the time. This came out on June 12th, 2001. So like a lot of us, obviously we knew Blink. Everybody knew Blink coming off of Enema. So you knew What's My Age Again, All the Small Things, Adam's Song. They kind of rode that wave. All of their dreams came true to their wildest imaginations. They're on top of the world. Every single thing they had worked so hard for was finally coming to fruition. They kind of rode that out with the Mark, Tom, and Travis show. They were literally playing, small clubs a couple years prior. Now they're selling out huge stadiums, just insane, massive worldwide tours, just packed. Everybody knows who they are. And so what's interesting to me is, I was kind of maturing. I was going from like middle school Ryan to, high school Ryan. And everybody had that sound of what Blink was with the super polished pop punk, and everybody was kind of interested to see what they were going to do with this next album. And so when Takeoff gets announced and comes out, I was on board, stoked, couldn't wait for it. We got the rock show first. I mean, that just sounds exactly like a fun punk Blink-182 summer song, so we knew what was going to come. And then when the full album dropped, it was just like, holy shit, these guys have taken a huge step. It's almost like a different sound, but it's still Blink. It's still polished and pop punk, but it's a little bit more angsty and a little bit deeper. And I think it just kind of, I don't know, it just hit me in a different way, and it was perfect for what I needed at that time. So they get back in the studio with Jerry Finn, who of course they had worked on with Enema of the State. At the time they were still signed to MCA. So MCA was a big label, and of course, they've got this huge band signed. They're ready for the follow-up. And so they say, we want a new album, let's get to working on it. So they get back into the studio, and what's interesting about Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and Mark has mentioned this, Tom has mentioned this, Travis has mentioned this. For the first time, they were really kind of working in opposition. And so leading up to that, these guys have gone through hell and back together, and they've worked so well together, and they're working towards a common goal of what they want. And now that they've achieved that, all of a sudden it's like, okay, what do we want to do next with this? Do we want to stick with this Enema sound? Do we want to push it further? Is now the time that you push it further? I mean, you're coming on a follow-up of your biggest album ever, what everybody clearly loves. You've got the formula right there. How do you want to approach this? Obviously, the label, they're going to want you to have something that's going to sell, that's going to be popular. So they're going to want something catchy in there, something that sounds like quote unquote Blink-182 at the time. And so they get back in the studio, and for the first time ever, we really have opposition on what people in the band want. People have said, and Mark and Tom and Travis have said, at the time, Travis was more into hip hop and heavy metal, and he was kind of wanting to come into his own in the band really at that point. If you've read Travis's book, he says that, up until Takeoff, he really wasn't even written in as like owner of Blink-182, the corporation, or getting, full rights or whatever. And he had to actually come to the band and say, look, if you guys want me in on this, you got to cut me in. And he totally understood that and respected that, because at that point, he'd only been in the band for a couple years. So Travis is wanting to kind of carve his way in and make his presence fully known. Tom at the time is kind of getting into what he calls, the post-hardcore, the heavier sounding stuff. He's into the Fugazi sounds, and he's wanting to get into a little bit darker stuff. Mark at the time is still popping out, pop punk gold, and he's thinking, look, we just fucking killed it with Enema. Let's continue down that route. We know everybody loves it. We know what people want. And so for the very first time, we have all three of them kind of tugging their own little way. And what's interesting, with hindsight as 2020, Mark, Tom, Travis, they've all always said that they think Blink is at their best when they're all kind of bringing their own ideas, and they're kind of tugging at each other and pulling each other, and it ends up kind of in the middle somewhere. And that's what you end up with, and that's what makes the song and the band so great. But this Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, this is the first kind of go around on this. So that's a really interesting dynamic to think about when you listen to this. So when MCA comes and says, look, we want to follow up to this Enema of the State, we want a summer pop punk song, by all reports, Tom wasn't particularly pleased with that. And, growing up as punk rock kids, where literally your entire attitude is like, who gives a fuck? I'm going to do whatever I want. It's tough to get to a point of where somebody's saying, we want you to kind of do this. And maybe that's not what you want to do. So that's certainly something to keep in mind when you listen to these songs. But honestly, I think they're better for it. So we get into the writing process, and the story goes, they had about 12 songs written, and they let Rick DeVoe, their manager at the time, listen to these. They were super proud of these songs, stoked. This is art. This is what everybody wants. They've worked so hard on these. They bring in Rick DeVoe. They sit him down to listen to the songs. And right away he says, this isn't it. He says, where is that Blink-182 summer song? I don't hear it. And the story goes, Mark is so pissed. Tom is so pissed. They leave their separate ways. Mark goes home and writes The Rock Show in 10 minutes. Tom goes home and writes First Date in 10 minutes. And lo and behold, those are the first two singles and some of their biggest songs that they still play pretty much every show to this day. So that's a really interesting thing that happened. It's just, I'm just trying to envision being in the studio at that time, and you just pour your heart out into it, and you bring in your manager and he's just like, no, this isn't it. But then to go home and to just bust out The Rock Show in 10 minutes. And this is another one for the folks who try to shit on Blink or newer Blink for, writing a bunch of songs, or, oh, they said they wrote this song in 5 minutes. They need to take their time. No, you don't. Sometimes the best songs come out so quick. And again, it's not that I'm a good songwriter by any means, but all of you who write music and all of you who have written songs and recorded songs, you can probably attest to this. Sometimes a song will just pop in your head, boom, it's done. Some of the songs that I would consider I've written like decent or somebody might listen to, they pop in my head in 10 minutes. It's the ones that sit in my head for a long time, or that you try to just beat a song out of, that honestly, sometimes they don't turn out too well. So, not to get crazy hypothetical, but it's almost like these songs you just pull them out of the atmosphere and just boom, you got them. And so for Mark to just go home, I'm sure he was just strumming an acoustic guitar, came up with that riff, just spit it out. Tom goes home all pissed off, writes First Date. I mean, that's just pretty hilarious. And that just shows you how good these dudes are at their craft at that time. It's pretty wild. They bring in MCA to listen to these songs as well. And this just cracks me up. Okay. Imagine bringing in Suits at a real fancy building, probably like the 20th floor. There's a big round table at the boardroom. All right, we're going to bring in our new album. This is our first hit. It's called Fuck a Dog. And you just have these executives who, they probably don't understand Blink-182. I'm sure they don't understand punk rock. And they just look at you like, are you serious? This is real life? They bring us in. I'm skipping my lunch meeting to come listen to a song called Fuck a Dog. And to follow that up, we also have a song called When You Fucked Hitler, and which later gets changed to When You Fucked Grandpa. And the story goes, which it isn't particularly surprising, but the executives in MCA just apparently lost their shit and just said, nope, this ain't happening. No fucking chance. Get back to the drawing board. We need that summer hit. Now, of course, obviously those dudes might have been kind of bummed about, I don't know, maybe they felt that their creative control was being pressed on just slightly. This apparently bummed Tom out pretty serious. But I don't know. It's just such an interesting thing. Like, I don't know what MCA would expect. Like, what these dudes wrote before. They're all about the joke songs, having a good time, but it's still just such a funny thing for somebody to come in. Yeah, I want you to listen to my new song. It's called Fuck a Dog. It comes in at 1 minute, 12 seconds. Don't you just love that melody right there? It's just great. But I mean, it is what it is. So, the thing with Take Off Your Pants and Jacket is, to me, the lyrics are a little bit darker. I feel like it's a little bit grittier. And I think, to me, coming off of Enema, they had pop punk, just absolutely perfected. That is just an absolutely perfect pop punk album. It's the definition of it. It's literally, if you can pick a pop punk album to show to somebody, that's it. That's the definition of it. And so the thing that's always so interesting to me about Takeoff is, where do you go next? And again, with hindsight is 2020, we know that next Tom was leaning towards that boxcar sound, which is a little grittier, little darker, which ultimately, obviously causes a lot of tension in the band. But I think we're all grateful in some aspect because it ends up leading them to that Untitled sound, which, if you let somebody listen to Untitled and you let them listen to Cheshire Cat or Buddha or something, I mean, those are two different bands, but that's that evolution. And that's what's cool about Takeoff to me, is because there's still that pop punk, there's still that summer happiness and just that pop punk polished sound in there. But there's also some grittier guitars. There's also some darker themes. And you can just tell that they're maturing and they're starting to get to that next stage of their career and, their artistic side whenever they're writing these songs. It's just starting to spill out of them just a little bit. And so that's what's always so cool to me. Mark has said, this is a permanent record of a band in transition. And, I know a lot of people probably don't think of this album that way. But again, as I've been trying to kind of reiterate, and I want you all to listen to this album. I'm sure you probably have today, but listen to it fucking loud. And just listen to the stuff that is going on in this album. And it's stuff that you weren't hearing on previous albums. And so just really pay attention to that stuff. I'm going to get into the track by track stuff here shortly. But it's very much a record that is this band in transition. And so totally, with both ears, close your eyes, take a listen to this album today and start thinking, again, we have hindsight to our benefit. Start thinking about, okay, this almost sounds like a boxcar riff, or this almost sounds like it could be heading towards Untitled. It's just a really cool timestamp of where the band was at that time. And I think that's one of the things that's always so cool to look back on when you're talking about these different time periods and where these bands are artistically at that point in time. One of the things that was just so cool to me as a kid, and I think it's part of why I'm just so nostalgic about this album and why I love it so much, but I think even the marketing and the rollout and everything was just so fucking rad. Obviously at that age, when you're a teenager, punk kid or whatever, anything involving, dirty jokes or shitty humor is just kind of funny. And you just like it a little bit more because your parents hate it that much. So the fact that the album itself is called Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and maybe some of your parents didn't quite get the joke and some of them did. I always just remember thinking that was so fucking funny. I think that was the first time I recall even feeling and holding a digipack. So that's the type of packaging that it comes in. California was that way when it came out. It's just really cool to see those CDs these days. I'm kind of wondering, I was thinking about this the other day. It's funny, vinyl has made its comeback. People are starting to get into cassettes. We're not that far away from people like being super nostalgic about CDs. Now, I think that's when it's going to be fucking weird for my generation. But to me, those CDs are just so fucking rad. I took them out this morning. I took pictures of them. To me, it was so awesome how they came in the 3 different colors. And there wasn't any way to tell from the back or the barcode or whatever. You could tell by a sticker on the front if you found it at the store, I think. But I remember calling my friends, hey, which one did you find? Or which one does this store have? And you'd kind of trade, because the coolest thing about it is not only was it a different color, but each album had 2 different bonus songs on it, which is just something that was unheard of to me at the time. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The history, the name, apparently it came from a guitar tech who he was... the story goes he was inside of, I think, a snowboarding lodge or store, and a kid came in all dirty, and his mom said, take off your pants and jacket. And I think, being a punk little kid, he just kind of heard that a different way. He heard the dirty side of that and was like, oh, that's pretty fucking funny. Apparently brought it to the band. They thought that was a good call, and, the rest is history. Apparently one of the alternate titles that went around at the time was If You See K. So if, IFUYOUCSEEK, like a person. Oh, if you see K. Of course, Little pun there, little alternate meaning, F-U-C-K for fuck. The 3 different logos on there stand for different aspects of the title. The plane stands for takeoff, the pants for pants, jacket for the jacket. To me, I just feel like it's such a rad fucking album. It's honestly, it's my favorite album of all time, and nothing else is even really close. And I still think it's cool. I think I've told the story on the pod about getting that signed, and I still think a fun little fact. It's really cool when you see signed copies of the CD, because of the digipack. The white was black, and the front was black, and the back was white. That's a tongue twister. And if you see signed copies of it from back in the day, they did some store signings throughout the promotion of this. So if you're looking for something signed by all 3 members, this is one of the ones that pops up somewhat often, and you can usually find that's authentic from that time period. But one thing that's really neat to me about those is they're typically signed on the back, and they're signed in black Sharpie on the back because the back is white and you can see the signatures. At the time, and this is pretty funny, but silver Sharpies and those new gold and metallic Sharpies, they weren't invented yet. So you couldn't sign the front. If you signed the front, it would just, blend in with the front cover and you couldn't even see it. So fun little fact there, when you see signed CDs of this, they're typically signed on the back by all 3 members. Today, if you get one of these signed, I still see them flip the CD and sign the back. It's just a funny little thing. They're just so used to doing it that way. However, if you get a vinyl or you have a silver Sharpie or something, in regards to the different logos on the front, Travis will always mark out the airplane if he signs it. So I don't know if he does it every single time. Maybe I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times, like if nobody's around, it's good mood, nice signing, he will mark out that airplane at the top and sign right by it. And if you look at my social media right now, you'll see a picture of that and you'll see what I'm talking about. By the way, I want to mention real quick, before I forget, I did launch designated pages for the pod. So for those of you who enjoy stuff that kind of I'm sharing and all the podcast stuff, I wanted to launch my own pages for that just so that I could kind of promote it as much as I wanted and just do fun shit there. So be sure to follow the new podcast pages. On Twitter, it is at 182 News. And on Instagram, it is at 182 News Pod. So totally check those out. That's where I will be really doing fun stuff with the pod and trying to kind of get some engagement there and have some fun stuff going on right there. So, okay, let's get into the songs. So Takeoff, as we've been talking about, everybody was stoked to see where they were going to go with this next album. We weren't sure what was going to happen. We weren't sure what the sound was going to be like, but we knew Blink was on top of the world. We knew they made some catchy fucking summer tunes, and we wanted to see what was going to happen. Now, to me, when I turn on this album for the first time and I hear Anthem 2, just down, 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 down. I mean, to me, to this day, let's fucking go. I mean, I lose my shit to this song. Absolute banger. I was so stoked to see them bring this back on the set list a couple years ago. I saw this at a sound check. I think I mentioned it on the previous podcast or one of the previous podcasts that they played this at a sound check I went to a couple years ago. I was not expecting this. And myself and my Blink friend in real life from a previous episode, Matt, I mean, it's no secret, Takeoff is our favorite album of all time. And we were just fucking going nuts. And sound checks are usually pretty chill, and we were just jumping up and down, losing it. So Anthem Part 2, to me, I mean, as soon as that kicks in, it just kicks off this entire era. It kicks off all my memories from this entire era. It's everything I want out of Blink-182. Mark even said to this day that this opener, this song gives him chills. And I think to me, at the time, the age I was, maybe looking back, some people try to say, well, they were 26, 27 years old writing for teenagers. And the thing for me is, well, yeah, they were our voice. And that's what made me relate to them so much, is I felt like they were speaking for me when I was not able to, or when nobody would listen to me. And that's one thing that I've always loved about these dudes and their lyrics and what they stand for and what they want to do with their lives and how they go about their lives is, they're speaking on behalf of me. And so, when they sing about some of these songs, or kids can't vote, adults elect them, and one of the songs lyrics I always liked about that is, "Earth is dying, help me, Jesus. Everything is falling to pieces. Earth is dying, help me, Jesus." And just kicking off that song with that aggression and just coming in with that, I mean, that is just an absolute banger. So, I mean, to this day, and I think maybe at the end of this, I'll do my top three. Spoiler alert, that's going to be in there. Second song, Online Songs. Man, that bass line is just, it's got Mark Hoppus written all over it. I love the bridge on that song so much. It's an incredibly underrated song. People beg for it all the time. And in fact, at the beginning of the pandemic, when Mark started doing his Twitch streams, people would just keep asking for this over and over and over. When are you going to play Online Songs? And it kind of became a thing. People kept asking about it. And he finally played it. I think it was acoustic on the Emo Night LA Twitch stream. He finally busted it out. And it was just so cool to see. Everybody's been wanting to hear this in some capacity live for so long. And that is just an underrated deep cut, and which is going to be a theme as I go through this album. We get to First Date. So First Date, the story goes, as I mentioned earlier, the label didn't think they had that catchy summer tune, and Tom goes home and writes this. It's allegedly about his first date with his previous wife, Jen, at SeaWorld in San Diego. To me, obviously insanely catchy song. It's a feel-good song. They have to play it. The crowd goes nuts. It's one of those that, yeah, I enjoy it, but it's basically this one and All the Small Things where I'm like, I've heard it so many fucking times that I'd be okay if it was a smaller show and it kind of accidentally got left off the set list, but they got to play it. And for people who are seeing Blink for the first time, this is one that is just a highlight of their evening, no doubt. So they have to play it. Obviously, incredibly popular song. The bridge on that's gnarly too. We get into Happy Holidays. So the funny thing about these joke songs on this album is they're pretty catchy, and they actually have some neat guitar stuff going on. And Mark said they wrote this one to piss off parents, which I'm sure it did. This is the one I told the story on the podcast when I went to the Untitled shows in LA. I went to a sound check and, excuse me, I'm dying. You were able to send in questions ahead of time. And I sent in the question to Mark. I wanted the true meaning behind this song. And I sent in the question to Mark and I said, did anybody's grandpa really eat 7 fucking hot dogs and shit in his pants? I thought it would go over so great. I thought they would crack up, tell this, insanely long story about how they were inspired to write this song from a Labor Day cookout, and somebody's grandpa ate so many hot dogs he shit his pants and fell over. And Mark read the question and just looked around and goes, no. As if it was the worst question in the history of the world. That will forever haunt me, but we've since made amends. So that's just a funny joke song. It's one of those things where, I didn't know of bands who were doing this, so to me, to have these serious songs that make you feel happy, that make you feel sad, ones that you can correlate to, and then just throw one in there about, your grandpa eating 7 fucking hot dogs, or, unless your dad will touch my cock, or shit like that. I mean, who does that? And it's just something that made them so unique and just so funny, and really just shaped and molded a lot of people's sense of humor. And I think that's how a lot of us could kind of relate together, because we're like, that's fucking funny, Why? Who cares? It just is. So that was, it's always a pleasure when that song comes on, to say the least. They still play that. Story of a Lonely Guy. This is one where, at the time, being a young adult, and, at the time you're starting to get into dating and girls and chicks, and you're starting to have feelings and having to deal with that. This is one of those albums that just, I was able to relate to so many lines on this for the very first time. When you're growing up, basically 0 to 12, 13, I feel like I didn't even have many bad days, maybe I just can't remember them, but everything's just about, let's just play and ride bikes and just do fun shit. And then you get to a certain age where it's like, fuck, there's feelings in this world, and I'm bummed, and that person doesn't like me, and this is weird. And as a young person, it's tough to kind of cope with that stuff. And especially, when it's hitting you so fast and you don't know what's happening. And, for the first time, these are lyrics and these are songs that I'm able to put myself in, and these lyrics are helping me. And I'm like, fuck, somebody else feels like that. And again, going back to kind of the thing I was talking about earlier, where, they're speaking for me. And I think that's one of the things that's just so amazing about music in general. And what is so powerful about music is a lot of music is about pain and experiences and love and losing. And to me, that's always the type of music that I just relate to so much. And it's really, it's one of the most magical things on this planet, to be honest. I mean, it really is, to be able to, especially when you can get it in a live environment. And I think that's what makes concerts so special, particularly with a band that, like this, you've listened to forever, you've looked up to forever. But to get in a live setting and vibe with that many people and with the artist who wrote that originally, I mean, that's just really fucking cool. And I don't know what gets any cooler than that, to be honest. So, I mean, this is one of those songs that right away at that time in my life was really helpful for me, to be honest. So, one of the lines I always liked about that song is the push it out, fake a smile. And again, that's just a simple line. Push it out, fake a smile. But to me, leading up to that, I never had to do that. And everything's fine and dandy. And then all of a sudden you're in high school and there's dickheads and there's, people don't like you, or people who are picking on you, or, you just don't fucking like your parents that day. And to actually have to fake your emotion or fake your well-being, to me, that was something that just always stuck out to me. That was just a really cool line. Still enjoy that song a lot to this day. Next, we get into The Rock Show. So, as I mentioned earlier, label didn't like any of the songs. They, not that they didn't like them, but they didn't think that they had that catchy Blink-182 summer banger. And so Mark goes home, writes The Rock Show. Enough said. Absolute banger. One of the songs that still to this day, just like What's My Age Again, I put this one in the same category as What's My Age Again. I can listen to these over and over and over and over and over. Every single show. Love it the same. Always look forward to it. So it's just an absolute banger. It kicked off this whole era. I love the bridge on that. Black and white pictures of her on my wall. So just such a great song that, people will be listening to forever and ever and ever. Okay, we get into Stay Together for the Kids. So this is one where really from a songwriting perspective, this is one, it reminds me of how I analyzed Letters to God on a previous episode from the Boxcar album. It totally changed what I thought was possible with songwriting at that time. And I don't know really why, but I think at the time, just that slowness and that sadness, and then just fucking kicking into that pure angst and letting that emotion out, that's just something that, I wasn't getting from whatever garbage I was hearing on the radio in my mom's minivan. It just really totally opened my eyes to, holy shit, this is taking you on a ride. And it's just such an incredible, audio ride to go on. I don't know how else to put it. But this song, I mean, so many people can relate to this song. So many people have played this over and over. I can't imagine how many people have just felt hopeless listening to this song. It's written about Tom. I think the story goes he came home one day and his dad's shit was like on the lawn and his dad was just gone. And so obviously it was about Tom's parents' divorce. I'm lucky enough to where my parents aren't divorced, but obviously just like a lot of you, I have tons of friends and know plenty of people whose parents are divorced. It's incredibly common these days. I mean, marriage is tough. And, I couldn't imagine what it's like to go through with children involved, as if it's not painful enough, falling apart with somebody you love or, have married, when there's kids involved. I mean, that's a serious thing that has serious serious lasting effects on your children. And that's something that, really up until this song came out, I really didn't hear too much of the kids' perspective. You always hear, they split, maybe, it's a pain. They have to go to 2 Christmases. Sometimes it's in your benefit. You get more shit. You get one parent trying to outdo the other on Christmas Day. But it can be a dark hole to be in, and especially as a young kid. And so, this song, to start out that slow with just that beautiful guitar part. I still play this guitar part all the time when I pick up a guitar, especially an acoustic guitar. I just love how this thing sounds. And then for that to kick in with that much angst, again, the only thing that I can compare it to that just makes me feel that way is that Letters to God. Listen to it on the Boxcar album if you haven't. But that one, it's just a beautiful, just acoustic, kind of chill, somber song. And then it just kicks in. And if you don't feel it with that guitar kicking in, I don't know what to tell you. It just kicks in and just the floodgates open and you can just feel the angst coming out. And when you're in a pit and they play this song, you just lose it. And to me, this is one of those songs that when that part kicks in, and there's a couple more that are like this. Adam's song is like this to me live. What's My Age Again is like this to me live. But this one in particular, when they kick in on that chorus and you're singing it live and you're vibing with that many people, it's powerful, powerful shit. And I just hope that we all get to experience it again one day and sometime soon, because it's my favorite thing in the world. But, to hear, and gosh, the juxtaposition of Mark and Tom's voice on this song, that's another thing that's underrated on this album. Them going back and forth, they've perfected it on this album. It's just killer. And so, with Mark coming in the beginning, and then Tom kind of taking over the powerful chorus. But, the line I love about this song just over and over and over is, if a stupid poem could fix this home, I'd read it every day. And to me, I remember there's so many times when I was growing up of where I just didn't fucking like that day, or I was going through issues, or was dealing with issues with my parents or school or girlfriends or whatever. And it's just like, God damn, if there was just something so simple I could do to fix everything. And not even with me, like, to me, one of the things that I think is part of my downfall that makes me unhappy is I'm always looking out for other people. So I will do whatever I can to make sure other people are happy, but I won't always take time for myself. I kind of take care of myself last. And I don't know why. I don't know if I was groomed that way or what. But what I'll find is I'm always going out of my way to do cool shit for other people or make other people smile or happy. But then at the end of the day, maybe I'm not spending enough time on myself, or I'm not particularly happy. And this is one of those things that when I would experience those feelings throughout my life, I could always come back to and just, listen to that over and over and over. If a stupid poem could fix this home, I'd read it every day. That's such a simple thing, but it's like, if there's nothing else I can do, I would do anything I could to make this day better, but there's nothing you can do in that situation. And so that song will forever go down in history as just an absolute banger that, people will be listening to forever. It's going to help people get through shit forever. And so for any of you, who have listened to that and have felt that way, I'm right here with you. Okay, here is what sets this album apart from all the others and makes this album the best of all time, in my opinion. All the other albums have, hits, bangers. Not all of them have a second half of the album that is as strong as this. Now, I will say, now that 9's out, the second half of 9 just hits different. Mark said that. And it does. By the time once you start getting into No Heart to Speak Of and Pin the Grenade, it's like, holy fuck. And this is how I felt about Takeoff for the longest time, because now, the hits are out of the way and the joke songs are out of the way. And once we get to this second half of the album, this is what sets this album apart from all the others, because these are fucking incredible songs. And really from here on out, you can take, 1, 2, 3 of these And, say you take Roller Coaster, Reckless Abandon, Every Time I Look for You. Match those three up against any latter half three on any other albums, and these are going to be the stronger three, in my opinion. And that's why, to me, this is such a perfect album, because there is no B-side, because the B-side is arguably better than the A-side. So let's get into this. So the way that this kicks off is with Roller Coaster, to me. Now, Roller Coaster is an amazing song, and something I want you to do on your listen through today, because this is something that did not happen prior to this with Blink. Don't fast forward, but once you get to that 1 minute, 38 second mark, there's an electronic bridge going on there. And I want you to listen to that on headphones, because for one, what Jerry Finn was doing right here is fucking insane. But for two, it is extremely, extremely experimental. And it's something that you damn sure weren't hearing on Dude Ranch and Buddha in Cheshire Cat. So, I mean, to me, this is kind of a turning point, again, of where you're just starting to get those little signs of what's to come with where these dudes are going artistically. So listen to that. You'll kind of hear it. If you listen on good headphones, you'll hear it going back and forth like it's really gnarly, and I want you to pay attention to that, because that is a turning point to me. That's something where, oh my God, I've never heard that from these dudes before, and this is fucking killer. So listen to that. It's really rad. We get into Reckless Abandon. They still play that song to this day. Absolute banger. To me, here is one that is just, it's probably in my top 10 of all time. That is Every Time I Look for You. This song is a beautiful Mark Hoppus song, and to me, this is another turning point. Go to the bridge. It's about that 1 minute 45-ish part. And when it's kind of like a fast strummed acoustic. And when it pauses for a second and then it just fucking kicks in so hard, that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what you're about to get, the next year with Boxcar Racer. I mean, listen to that bridge right there. And I mean, that is that powerful, angsty, gritty guitar coming in, packing a punch that is just so gnarly, so fucking rad. And I just love that part. And again, with hindsight as 2020, that's just another little sign of where particularly Tom was going, with Boxcar, and where they all were going to end up with Untitled, just really gnarly. We get into Give Me One Good Reason. Banger, another one. I mean, again, give me any of these latter half songs up against latter half songs on previous albums, and it's just an incredible run of 2-3 songs in a row that really don't get much love and totally should. But I like on Give Me One Good Reason, I always like the ones where he said, I like the ones who say they listen to the punk rock. I like the kids who fight against how they were brought up. Again, at the time, being a little punk kid, starting to come into my own, that was just something that I related to, and I suspect a lot of you did as well. We get into Shut Up. Now, there's a running gag right now going on with Mark where he doesn't like this song. I don't know that he hates it. I suspect when he looks back, maybe he finds the lyrics a tad shallow. I don't know if cringe is the right word, but this song's amazing. Okay, I love this song. My wife loves this song, and here's why. I like cussing. I like Blink-182 and cuss words. So, to start a song, just coming in with "Shut the fuck up," she said. I mean, I love that song. I think it's an absolute banger. It is in no way a B-side to me. I mean, as far as this album goes, it's top notch. I don't know why Mark hates it. Again, I think maybe he'd reword the lyrics a little bit if he were to rewrite it these days. But I think it's a banger. And, at the time, maybe not so much anymore, but at the time, I related with like the "I'll run away" lyrics. And I remember, you guys probably do as well, but it's like, you get to the point as a kid where you just fucking run away. Like, I think I ran away probably 3 or 4 times, And, as a parent now in hindsight, that's scary as fuck, especially this is prior to cell phones and, when you have your kid hooked up to a tracking device everywhere they go. There were several times where I just could not take whatever situation I was in, or I was so hurt, and I would just fucking run away. And you'd just go to a park, and you just wanted your parents to be worried, and you just wanted to be a little shithead and run out. And so at the time, I could totally relate to that. And so this song still has a little sweet spot in my heart. We have, and then we end with "Please Take Me Home." So this is a great closer. The thing I like the most about this song is there's a line in there that does not get enough love, but it's right up there with shit that people, I think, should be getting tattooed. But the "Be Strong When Things Fall Apart" lyric. I love that. Be strong when things fall apart. Be strong when things fall apart. So that right there, that line is just everything I need. Be strong when things fall apart. I still go back to that line occasionally if I'm in a weird spot. I'm like, you know what? It's right up there with "Tomorrow Holds Such Better Days." Like, you got this. It's all good. Now, what sets Takeoff apart as far as coolness, as far as the 3 different colored releases with the digipacks, is the bonus songs. So each CD you got had 2 different bonus tracks. The green had "Don't Tell Me That It's Over" and "When You Fucked Grandpa," which was originally "When You Fucked Hitler." That was one of the ones they showed MCA, and they said, growing up, I didn't have the green one. So those 2 I didn't listen to as much until later on. But these next 2 I definitely did. So the yellow one had "What Went Wrong." And so this was one of the ones where it's like, holy shit, the bonus tracks, arguably are better than some of the tracks on the album. And so this is just a beautiful acoustic song. I remember this one getting me through countless breakups, and it was just, one of those super chill songs you would throw on. And the line I like about this one is where he's like, "You fucked up my life." And I remember just listening to this song and, having people in mind, like, "You fucked up my life. What went wrong? You said this was right. You fucked up my life." That's a great one. Doesn't get enough love. These are not on Apple Music and Spotify. People beg for these. There's a couple vinyl presses that have them on there. If not, you can find them on YouTube if you've never heard them. As well, on the yellow one was "Fuck a Dog," which enough said. And then the red one, which this is the one, I think this is the original one I had at the time. This one came with "Time to Break Up," which is an amazing song. I love this song. Got me through countless breakups. Always went back to this when I was hurt or in a weird spot. And the line I love so much about this one is, "If you want the pain to go away, better suck up your pride, admit you lost her, let her go, move on." And Tom just ringing that out. "Let her go, move on." I mean, sometimes that's what you got to do. And when you're in that spot, it's the worst fucking thing. It's tough. But if you haven't heard that song, totally listen to it. I guarantee you there's tons of people out there who would just play that on repeat, just like me. So the last bonus song we had there on the red one was "Mother's Day." So we just had Mother's Day, and typically when that comes around, I end up posting that song or revisiting that song, and I'll be sucking and fucking touch, fucking sucking and touch. It's just, these dudes are clowning, just sitting around on an acoustic guitar, coming up with these songs is just wild. What a time to be alive. So, that's kind of my rundown on the album. It ended up releasing, June 12th, 2001, which is 20 years ago to the day. Debuted at #1 on the US Billboard charts, which is incredible for a punk rock album at that time. The singles were "Rock Show," "First Date," "Stay Together for the Kids." It has since sold 14 million copies worldwide, which is just insane. I mean, when Blink hit big, they were just at such the perfect time of when everybody was, heading to FYE and Disc Jockey and the local record stores just to grab these CDs. So again, my favorite album of all time. I've told the story on the podcast on, I think it was your Blink-182, your favorite Blink-182 collectibles. My #1 favorite item of all items in my collection of my Blink-182 stash, everything I have of, all the autographs and short bus and all that stuff. My favorite collectible I have and I own to this day, if my house is on fire, what I am going to go grab is my Take Off Your Pants and Jacket signed vinyl. It is signed by all 3 members. It was insanely hard to pull off. Full band signed vinyl is just insanely rare, as if, full band signed CDs are rare. Full band signed anything are insanely rare, but vinyl is just ridiculously rare. I think I've seen 3 full band signed Take Off Your Pants and Jacket vinyl in my 9+ years, almost a decade of documenting every Blink-182 autograph I've ever seen. So it's really rad, really rare. It took me a long time to pull off. I had to get Travis and Mark, and then I had to somehow get Tom to sign it. And so ended up pulling it off. It's an incredible piece. If you check the podcast Instagram page, that was my first post this morning. Had to show that off. Couldn't miss an opportunity there to show that off. Again, it's at 182 News Pod. 182 News was taken, goddammit, even though I couldn't find the account. But that's okay. So the Twitter is at 182 News. The Instagram is 182 News Pod. And I'm going to end this episode with my top 3 songs from Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. At number 3, I'm going to go with Every Time I Look For You. Just an absolute banger. Really is. And it's such a rare, rad, deep cut that you really don't see people bring up too often. But I'm going to. It's number 3 on mine. Number 2, we're going to go with The Rock Show. I mean, how can you not? Absolute summer banger to this day. Love it every time it comes on. And then number 1, my favorite Take Off Your Pants and Jacket song from this album is Anthem Part 2. I gotta go with it. It kicked off this era for me. When I hear that little intro start off, I get hype. I just can't help it. And so that's my number 1. I'm anxious to hear yours. As always, hit me up at Poppin' Curbs on Twitter and Instagram. This was a last second pod I had to throw together. I was so stoked seeing everybody's Take Off Your Pants and Jacket merch and memories and everything like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sick. My fucking podcast logo is the Takeoff logo. I have got to get a podcast out today. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this. Play this record loud today, and I will catch you next time. Peace.